Hi there, everybody. This is Michelle Denman. How are you? I wanted to share this with you now. This is really deep stuff. It's super important for the time we're in the world right now. In fact, it's so prevalent and what I'm going to share here, and I encourage you to really listen and learn. Some of this you may already know, some things may be new. But I really encourage you to really learn what the Lord is warning about right now. And it has to do with the New Age movement. And there's more to it, but I'm just kind of starting here with what the Lord showed me today. And it really will help you to understand what's going on. We need to know, as Christians, we have to know what is going on to help people and to save them from this. Is a very serious situation. It's eternal, and we really have to understand it to be able to help people out of it. And it's a big deal right now what God is doing with this. And so this morning when I woke up, the Lord mentioned to me Aaron Rodgers, who is a very famous quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. He's an excellent football player. I admire his talent, and he's exceptional in his sport. He's been very successful, and he's probably considered one of the greatest. And Aaron Rodgers is, in the NFL. And so what this is about is, and I'll share with you as we go on here. So I woke up this morning, received his name from the Lord, and then steps went on throughout the day. And then Good Fight Ministries just did this video about Aaron, and this is from complete love. We don't want to bash. We're not here to bash anybody. We're not here to bash people. We're here to love people, and we're not here to harm anybody or expose them, because that's not what the heart of this is. It's to help them, to shine a light on where they may be lost. And God is going to use these things in these last days, like Hollywood and with the celebrities. He's using it to actually show people so that they can find their way home to God. And it's just what's going on right now is everywhere. It is in the fashion movement. It's in the wellness movement. It's in yoga. It's in comics. It's in movies. It's in TV. It's in music. You can't escape. This is everywhere. And once you see it, God gives us that gift of discernment. Once you see it, you can't unsee it because it's everywhere, and you begin to see the deception and what's going on. And sadly, when someone, is very famous, people listen to them, and they have a massive audience, and they have a massive influence on people and the youth. And especially when they're very vocal, and they have every right to do that, to share, what their experience is. It's about influence and what is influencing the world. And this is a big deal right now. So I wanted to share this with you because it did come up this morning from the Lord. And then Good Fight Ministries, then the Lord knew that was coming, obviously. So the Lord warned me in the morning to pay attention to Aaron Rodgers today. And then they did this video. So this is going to be very, very helpful. Please listen in, and I will be sharing what God showed me as well. But here, I'll start the video.
Two-time MVP and Super Bowl champion quarterback Aaron Rodgers recently sat down with Aubrey Marcus to discuss his use of the hallucinogenic drug ayahuasca. And we're going to be discussing that, as well as others who have used this drug, quite popular artists and so forth, who have used it to open themselves up to the demonic realm. And to discuss all of that with me is none other than the president and founder of Good Fight Ministries and pastor of Blessed Hope Chapel in Simi Valley, California, Pastor Joe Schimmel.
Chad, I'm excited about doing this show because it's imperative that our audience is aware that what's the phenomena that's going on now with the love affair with hallucinogens is actually prophesied in the Bible. We've done a lot of cutting edge research. Even if you watch our video, They Sold Their Souls for Rock and Roll, the 10-hour version, we make it very clear what the scriptures say about pharmakeia, and we'll get into that as we go. But it's just interesting. This is exactly what we've been warning about for some time. And now we see celebrities promoting it, and the Bible shows us that demonic activity would increase in the last days in connection with mind expanding drugs. And the scriptures prophesy, we'll get into that, and it's happening before our eyes.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things is that obviously Aaron Rodgers is going to have a huge following. You got the football season right around the corner right now. A lot of people are, oh, I love my football team, and they're watching the guys that they drafted, seeing how they're playing in training camp and whatnot. But a lot of people don't realize even Aubrey Marcus and how big he is. In fact, his channel has over 325,000 subscribers on it, and he's been seen a lot on Joe Rogan. And Joe, one of the things, interesting to use Joe with Joe Rogan there, but one of the things that is interesting when I look at this as a whole is this popularization. Joe Rogan has been a proponent of this over and over again when it comes to pushing, using these psychedelics, using these hallucinogenic drugs in order to open people up. And they think that they're talking to the universe. They think that, maybe even ancestors. We'll play some clips of them saying it so you don't just say, oh, Chad, you guys are just making this up. No, this is them. They're the ones saying it. They're telling us what the feelings and the things that they're going through when they're doing this, Joe. But honestly, when we look at it, this popularization, as you mentioned it, as an end times deception, and I'm sure we'll get into that more, but I've been kind of astounded by how open people are with this lately.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting with Joe Rogan. He's incredibly popular, even though he's definitely not a moral conservative at all. He's very loose with morality and what have you. Not the best example at all. In fact, he's leading people into illicit drug use, which I think is important to understand how, even at the beginning of the show, you get this psychedelic, backdrop, and you've got these monkeys that have dropped down from the trees, scurrying among the mushrooms, which is a theory, a ridiculous, foolhardy theory from Terence McKenna that evolution, basically got a big jump from monkeys to humans, supposedly, as though we were evolved from monkeys. Even scientists don't typically say that. When the monkeys were, according to Terence McKenna, who's kind of like the Timothy Leary, after Timothy Leary had died, there was that vacuum of a leader in hallucinogens, and Terence McKenna filled that void. And and by the way, Joe Rogan said that he was watching some comedian, and he mentioned, Terence McKenna's line that, how he took the mother of all loads. That means, drugs. And he wanted to know who Terence was, and he started looking into him. And then he was inspired. His backdrop at the beginning of the show, along with that all-seeing eye in the middle of his head and the picture opening you up to the spiritual world, was probably influenced by this as well, was the idea that these monkeys were running out of food. So they happened to just look under cow pads on the ground and mud pies, cow pies, and found magic mushrooms. They started eating these magic mushrooms, and all of a sudden they began to hallucinate. They began to grow and become human beings in time. And as ridiculous that is, that believe it or not, people latched onto that theory. And I don't know how strongly Joe Rogan feels about that, but he's mentioned it a few times. And by the way, it's basically the same old lie. Satan's lie, if you partake of the forbidden fruit, you can become as God. The monkeys partook of the forbidden, mushrooms, and they are on the road to deification, humanity being one of the stops to divinity.
It's really interesting, especially, Joe, we're going to be watching the second installment, not installment, it is the second installment, but also the second edit after going through it the first time of our new video, Marvel and DC's War on God, specifically this one dealing with Doctor Strange.
Tomorrow.
And one of the things you go over a number of times is also some of the poop eating from Mr. Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
And I find it so interesting that he was really into that. And then you're talking about people eating shrooms that are made underneath cow pies. And it just kind of shows you that Satan is laughing at them. And it's heartbreaking because
and Crowley was into drinking blood, which we're going to get into as well in this show. So.
It's a wide variety, and it's crazy because we could literally do shows like this every single week because something comes out with some major person who's into this weirdo stuff.
And it's being promoted.
And it's promoted. And like you said, they're finding these shrooms under cow pies. You're like, oh, we should put those in our mouth. That sounds like just a wonderful idea. And it is heartbreaking, but it's dangerous. And one of the reasons we mentioned demonology, even in the title of this, is because of the reality of what they're actually getting in touch with. And that is the real key here to understand the spiritual realm that they're really getting involved with. And before we even get into that, Joe, I think just Aaron Rodgers as a whole is a good place to start. because a lot of people don't realize, one, he's completely estranged from his family. In fact, when the fires were happening up in Northern California a few years ago, he had put out a video about raising money for them. And his own brother wrote to him, he's like, you haven't even called your own mom, but you're making videos for people whose houses have been torched. But we're up here and you haven't even contacted us. And a lot of people have pointed this out, that a lot of it has to do with them trying to bring him up as a Christian and him going astray. So I think that maybe just going into some of the backdrop of kind of, he's a perfect case of deconstruction when it comes to the Christian faith. And not only is it a perfect case of deconstruction, but as you're going to hear him a little bit later in the show describing this ayahuasca experience, one of the things that we learn, and I'm telling you from trying to get through some of John Steingart's tweets without wanting to pull my hair out, he was the guy from Hawk Nelson who deconstructed as well, is that when you just abandon the Christian faith and you go away from Jesus Christ, who is, what is he? The Logos. The things that your mind will be able to come up with, one, and allow demons to, I think they're mocking them. I mean, really, they are mocking them. They are making fun of them. They are puppets. And when I see this, and it breaks my heart, but when you're willing to give up the truth of the gospel, I think that all of this kind of just goes right alongside of you are willing to really believe anything.
Yeah, you become so open-minded that your brains fall out, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what's happened to many of these people spiritually. In fact, as we know, Aaron Rodgers is a product of the rotten fruit of, Rob Bell and his deconstructionism. We warned about him when most evangelical churches, or many of them anyway, thousands, had his Zoom videos in their library, and their kids would watch them. We said, this guy is being used by the Piper man, by Satan. And we warned about that when he was still accepting the church, and it didn't take long before he's led all kinds of people astray into universalism, into no longer fearing and loving the Lord, and into he even mentioned he's not even, at one point he said, I don't even go to church anymore. He led many people that began to follow him and became emergent. Before you knew it, they fell away. I was having people come to me, man, Joe, help us. At church, there's all kinds of our people getting into Rob Bell, the emerging church, and they're no longer following the Lord. I was hearing that prior to us radically exposing him. And he got a hold of Aaron Rodgers. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Pneuma videos, as you had mentioned earlier, were in a lot of different youth groups. And I didn't know about this because Rob Bell, by the time that I came to the Lord, you had done already a number of things on Rob Bell, Racing Hell and so forth. And so I didn't grow up in a youth group where I was hearing this guy all the time. But I remember seeing online the video he made against the bullhorn guy, which was basically somebody preaching the gospel on the street. And I thought, wow, just from the outset, this is just me being honest, what an effeminate man. And I thought, wow, that person doesn't seem to really care about truth or the gospel being presented. I don't know what he's talking about, but I thought, wow, this guy's really interesting. And then you had done the Submerging Church, which really did a number on the emergent church to where they changed their name to Progressive. Not just you, obviously, but a number of other people that put out videos against the emergent church where they started running for the hills, and they've become the Progressive Church today. I mean, that's really what they are. And Brian McLaren had said that when it got, hey, we don't hear the emergent church anymore. Brian McLaren made it clear that they're still ingredients of the same pie. And they've snuck in that way. Yeah,
and that wasn't long after we put out a video called The Submerging Church. So we were happy to say, hey, this is really what it is. Not progressive Christianity, it's degressive, it's apostate. But just like Aaron Rodgers became apostate. And when you become apostate, you're open, as you mentioned, Chad, to any kind of demonic voices. And when you open yourself up to, having another state of consciousness, you open yourself up to Satan, because the Bible says, be sober, be vigilant. You're called to be sober. So you open yourself up to an altered state of consciousness, no longer sober-minded. Be vigilant, sober, vigilant. Your adversary, the devil, walks about as a roaring lion, seeking to, devour us, So, and it goes on to say, resist him steadfast in the faith. If you're not steadfast in the faith, if you're not putting the whole armor of God, you'll be devoured. So if you begin to take hallucinogens, which the Bible forbids as being a doorway to the demonic world, you're not only no longer sober-minded, but you are actually basically waving a flag saying, "Hey, Satan, I surrender to your powers. I'll give you these experiences." And guess what? He'll give you some experiences. He might end up in an insane asylum, going in a mental hospital, which many people do when they do hallucinogens eventually. Sid Barrett, he was the founder of Pink Floyd. A lot of people don't know the history of Pink Floyd. He's one that named Pink Floyd. He was the guitarist and everything, and he was dropping some LSD, and he started dropping more and more LSD. Before you knew it, he was parked in his garden, and he was, basically, heartbreaking. His brain at work. People said he's in a vegetative state for years and years and years. Only at the end of his life, just before his death, did he come out of that to a degree. Wow. And very, very heartbreaking. And that's happened all over the place. I mean, yes. Timothy Leary, who was basically a follower of Satanist Aleister Crowley, but he was the hero of the drug revolution of the hippie movement, celebrated the defrocked Harvard University professor that started turning his people on to LSD. Well, he talked about, and I've got his book called Flashbacks, is on LSD. And he talks about not only Crowley and stuff, but he talks about how, he talks about a man in one of his experiences, and he thought he was acting like a gorilla, jumping all over the place, and then jumped almost to his death off of a building.
No, it is incredible. I mean, where all this stuff really leads, and like you said, being so open-minded that your brain falls out, and you guys are going to get to see that. But I wanted to go over, as he mentioned, just